pardon me a moment. Your video's gonna start in just a second. I just need a minute of your time. May I have a seat? The name's Detective Finder. Detective Pathfinder. And a little birdie told me there's been a little bit of some, chicken recess, you know, some poultry horsing around, some foul play, if you would, that a certain chair's bit the big one. And it weren't no accident. I'm here involved. I've been looking at this case for about the last week or so now, and let me tell you, it's not a clean one. But we've narrowed things down. We've narrowed it down to 5 suspects, and we're gonna need some help finding the culprit. Throw the pictures on screen right now. Any of these 5 suspects could be responsible for our little chairicide. You know, having a little bit too much fun playing God. So if you've got any dirt on any of these 5, leave it in the comments below, alright? I don't care what it is, we'll take anything. I don't care if it's made up. This is way past the books. If you got a good enough lie to implicate one of these 5 suspects, well, you're gonna make my job a lot easier, alright? Alright, enjoy your video. I'll be back. The Thaumaturge was surprisingly difficult to write tips for, because at its core the class is very, very simple and kind of just does 1 or 2 things really, really good, but then every single one of its 9 subclasses all plays really, really different. So how do I come up with tips for a class that is simple at its core but wildly different by its subclasses? Watch and find out. Welcome to my 5 tips to improve your Thaumaturge in Pathfinder 2e. Short intro, jumping into it. The detective guy was weird, but we'll move past that. Huge shout out to all the members of the No Net One's Patreon page. If you would like to support them as well, there's a link in the description which can take you over there, and you can pledge for $1, $5, $10, or $20 a month. They all do the exact same thing. They just support me a little bit more. Thank you to everybody who has supported, is currently supported, and is even thinking about supporting the channel. Appreciate y'all. Without you, there is no No Net November. And right now, I'm feeling pretty damn good about it. On with the show! I'm feeling extra dramatic today, and I don't know why. I miss the stage. Like I said, the Thaumaturge is simple at its core, but it does one thing really, really, really well, and that's what this first tip is about. It's about utilizing a mechanic that a lot of players do ignore, even though it is a core part of the Thaumaturge's existence and identity: recall knowledge. Now, obviously, you're a Thaumaturge. If you read the class, you already know that you're going to be using exploit vulnerability on creatures to get access to their weaknesses or creating a new weakness on them. If you normal succeed, yes, you get your bonus damage, but you also get to find something out about the creature. An example they give is asking what the creature's greatest weakness is. And if you critically succeed with exploit vulnerability, you are getting all of their resistances, weaknesses, immunities, the amounts of them, as well as anything unique that will let you get past it, all just by doing what your class is supposed to do. But here's my hot take. Even if you don't need to get access to your bonus damage, this is still worth doing because you are a recall knowledge master specifically for any creature, and this includes unique creatures. So why does all of this matter? Well, it's because recall knowledge is already an incredibly powerful tool. Like I said, can you not? Recall knowledge is an incredibly powerful tool, getting you mechanical advantages and knowledge over your opponent, but a lot of the times, this isn't going to work for your average character, specifically because of the uncommon, rare, and unique traits. These traits are insane, because usually they don't do anything, but on a creature, an uncommon creature gains a +2 to the DC to recall knowledge, rare is a +5, unique is a +10. If you're level 7 identifying a creature, the DC is usually 23. If they're a unique creature, it's 33. Not for the Thaumaturge. This is because exploit vulnerability specifically states, select a creature you can see and attempt an esoteric lore check against a standard DC for its level. Even though this is functioning like a recall knowledge action, mechanically it is slightly different, and thus the creature doesn't get the +10 bonus to this DC. You are technically not recalling knowledge. You are making an esoteric lore check against a standard DC of the creature's level. And I know this sounds minute, but it is different. So this is a reminder that when it comes to identifying creatures, the Thaumaturge is the best class in the game at doing so, because remember, esoteric lore can be used on anything as long as it's a creature. Also haunts and curses, but mostly creatures. Alright, my generic "this is how the class works so you should understand it" tip is out of the way, so let's move on to an actual tip that can affect people who might have been playing a Thaumaturge for a little longer than one session. Mortal weakness is not always the right answer. This is a tip that's best put into play based on information you gained from your exploit vulnerability. If you know the value of a creature's weakness, you can compare it to that of your personal antithesis. Remember, your personal antithesis always inflicts the same amount of damage of 2 plus half your level. If a creature has weakness 5 to fire and you're level 1, then yeah, you're gonna want to use mortal weakness because 5 bonus damage per hit is more than 3 bonus damage per hit. But let's say you're level 9 and your personal antithesis is now dealing 6 bonus damage per hit, but you're fighting a creature that still has weakness 5 to fire. As long as you can get that information, it is likely to be more worth it to go for the personal antithesis than the mortal weakness of a single creature. This is difficult because you only get the value of a creature's weakness on a critically successful exploit vulnerability, but sometimes you can make an educated guess. You know, if you're fighting a creature that probably doesn't have weakness 10 to anything, and your personal antithesis is dealing 6, 7, or 8 damage, a lot of the times it's going to be more worth it to go for that option to get an extra 1, 2, 3, 4 points of damage on every single hit, rather than just exploiting a weakness they have because you can. But like everything in Pathfinder, analyze the battlefield, think about what you're doing. Remember that mortal weakness doesn't just apply to the target you pick, but all other targets of the exact same creature type. The example they give is, yeah, you can take advantage of a werewolf's weakness to silver, and if there's 2 other werewolves in the encounter, your attacks also trigger their weaknesses. This is not true of the personal antithesis. So if you're going single target and you're sure your personal antithesis is better than their mortal weakness, go for the antithesis every single time. If you're fighting multiple creatures and your mortal weakness is only 1 lower than personal antithesis, mortal weakness might still be the right call, so you don't need to re-exploit vulnerability on every single one. It's not a cut and dry rule, but it's something to keep in mind that mortal weakness, even though it requires a success or higher, is not always the right choice. This third tip is more about building your Thaumaturge. This isn't going to help you too much in gameplay, but it's worth thinking about when constructing your character. You see, Paizo designed all of the subclasses of the Thaumaturge to fall into one of 3 categories: proactive implements, reactive implements, and passive implements. The amulet, bell, shield, and weapon implements are all reactive, meaning to get pretty much anything out of this implement, you need to spend your reaction on a trigger to make it happen. For the weapon, it's basically a reactive strike. For shield, it's shield block. For the bell, it's interrupting spells and stuff. The chalice, mirror, and wand implements are all proactive, meaning on your turn you spend an action or more to activate them and gain some kind of bonus. The chalice gives healing, the wand does magical damage, the other one does something, I'm sure it's the mirror, you duplicate yourself. How'd I forget the most overpowered one? And finally, the lantern, tome, and regalia implements are all passive. You don't have to activate them, you don't have to spend anything to make them do stuff. They just give off a permanent aura passive effect of some kind, such as the lantern automatically attempting to break through nearby illusions. I just realized I haven't given the tip yet. The tip is not to overlap, or at least try not to overlap. This is because you can typically only hold 1 implement at a time, and so having 2 implements that work off the same thing can be a little bit restrictive. And even if you are going for 2 implements at once, which can happen if you don't need a weapon in hand at the moment, if you have, say, 2 reactive implements, you only get 1 reaction per turn. You can't use both. Or if you have 2 proactive implements, that's very heavy action economy just to get the effects of your implements, which doesn't leave you much room to do anything else. The only ones you could possibly get away with are stacking passive implements, because as long as you're holding them, they do still give off their effects at no cost, aside from not holding a weapon. Dual wielding implements isn't exactly recommended, but it is still usable. But that's all this tip is at the end of the day. There are 3 different types of implements. It is strongly encouraged for your 3 implements over your Thaumaturge's career to take 1 from each type. It's not mandatory, it's not written in stone, you can do whatever you want. You can take amulet, bell, and weapon if you want. Weapon's the easiest one to couple as well, because you're going to be holding a weapon anyway, but at the end of the day, try not to overlap on reactions. I wouldn't take weapon and bell. You know what I'm saying? My fourth tip is simple, borderline obvious, but a lot of my tips tend to be. It's just the things you don't think about. In order to get implements empowerment and all of the Thaumaturge goodies, you need to have your implement in one hand and be attacking with a one-handed weapon in the other. Nowhere in the Thaumaturge class does it say it has to be a one-handed melee weapon. Now this is tough because things like bows, sure they're technically one-handed, but you need two hands to shoot them. Crossbows are great, but you need a second hand to reload them unless you have a feat somewhere else that says otherwise. No, the best ranged option for a Thaumaturge is a throwing weapon. You'll need decent strength and dexterity to make the most use of these, but if you don't want to be on the front lines, but you still want to be putting out that decent Thaumaturge damage, which is really good, by the way, if you haven't played one, consider a throwing weapon. I played a Thaumaturge with a returning chakram, with, again, that 20-foot reach. That's plenty. 40 feet if you want to take just a -2 to your hit. This is great. You get all the benefits of being a Thaumaturge. So much passive damage. You don't even really need to crank strength if you don't want to. Sure, you won't get the strength damage bonus on thrown, but you're already getting +2 from implements empowerment and plus at least 3 from personal antithesis. Right at level 1 with a chakram, you're throwing for, what is it, 1d4 plus 6 damage? 5 damage? Whatever? That's insane. It's kind of sad that Thaumaturges are kind of just better with throwing weapons than Barbarians are. Barbarians have to take a feat to even apply their rage damage to thrown weapon attacks. Thaumaturge just gets that right out the base gate line of starting a new level 1 beginning newbie fresh adventurer character in a role-playing game that might be called Pathfinder, where you roll dice and do things, and please go to the next. Tip number 5, I'm combining 2 tips in one. One if you don't want to change any rules, and another if you're okay with bending something. My first tip, if you're going rules as written, is don't forget that you have dubious knowledge. If you ever normal fail a recall knowledge check of any kind on anything, remember exploit vulnerability is technically not recall knowledge, you get 2 pieces of information, one right and one wrong. And a lot of tables really hate this feat because it requires the GM to come up with something off the top of their head that is going to be so obviously wrong. Where are we? Well, you're sure you're either in the city of Absalom or potentially Atlantis. I wonder which one's wrong. A lot of GMs are not comfortable coming up with obviously wrong information that the player then sort of has to blindly be like, I don't know which one's right, I know these 2 things, it's kind of awkward. So, if you're okay with bending the rules slightly, talk to your GM, talk to your players, talk to your table. This is important communication relationships. If your table doesn't like dubious knowledge, I think it is perfectly fine and balanced to offer one of the following skill feats to replace it based on which type of knowledge the Thaumaturge is most invested in. Are they most invested in Arcana? Give them Arcane Sense. Free Detect Magic at level 1 is not that powerful. Are they more invested in Nature? Give them Natural Medicine. They don't have to invest in the Medicine skill, they can just bump their Nature and still use it for medicine checks. Let a religion-focused Thaumaturge take Student of the Canon, being a little bit better at identifying religious information, especially if they have any deity they worship themselves. And finally, for Occultism, if I look on my script here and I look around to find it, you could even give them Root Magic as a little way to just lean into that occult, witchy kind of vibe your Thaumaturge might have. I'd say any of these 4 feats, or any level 1 feat from one of the 4 knowledge skills, would be a fine replacement for dubious knowledge, and even gives a little bit more investment in your character, because why did you pick that feat? Are they more focused on the arcane, the religious, the occult, the natural magics of the world? I really like that, honestly, more than just giving them dubious knowledge for no reason. So yeah, my last tip was a little bit of a tip and then a little bit of like a homebrew advice, but what can you ask from me? The Thaumaturge is such a weird class. At its core, you exploit vulnerability and then you hit them. But then beyond that, it's which implement do you have? Are you reacting? Are you proactive? Or do you just have a passive buff? Are you skill-based? Are you combat-based? There's so many ways to build a Thaumaturge, it's really hard to come up with 5 concrete universal feats. Feats? This is not tomorrow's video. Tips for how to help you play the class. If you want just how to play it, exploit vulnerability and hit them. I want to give a huge shout out to all the members of the No Nat One's Patreon if you'd like to join them as well. Link in the description. If you've got I'm doing an outro. Excuse me? You're a terrible co-star. If you have any tips for Thaumaturges that I might have glossed over here, let me know in the comments below. I'm sure I missed something. It's a complicated class. Even if you have tips for specific implements and fancy ways to use them, feel free to share. I've learned a lot from the comments on this month's videos. It's been super cool to see people with experience, like playing a class from 1 to 20, talk about something they didn't discover until they were level 13 or higher. You know, it's been really cool to see people sharing their Pathfinder experience in the comment section. And I'll say it, the comments on these last like 15 or so videos have been some of the best I've seen in years. Just a very friendly, amazing community of people sharing experiences, interacting with each other, and talking about the things they've helped each other learn. It's so wholesome. Y'all are the best. I appreciate you. We're approaching the back half of No Nat November, so strap in. There's a lot more to come. See you tomorrow for Thaumaturge feats. Later, No Nat Ones, whatever my outro is, video's over.